Law 1. The Law of Irrationality. Master your emotional self. You like to imagine yourself in control of your fate, consciously planning the course of your life as best you can, but you are largely unaware of how deeply your emotions dominate you. I bet you think that you're in complete control of your life, but are you really? You are, for the most part, completely unaware of how deeply your emotions control your life. The changes in your mood and this disconnect from reality is where bad decisions and negative thoughts originate. Rationality is your ability to counteract these emotional effects on your decision making. The first step on the path to becoming a rational person is accepting that humans are fundamentally irrational creatures. Living organisms for millions of years depended on their instincts to survive. Over time, for some animals, this evolved from an instinct to a feeling of fear. Our brains have evolved to a higher mammalian brain, which is comprised of 3 parts. The first and oldest being the reptilian part of the brain, which automatically controls and regulates the body. This part of the brain is where our instincts derive from. Next is the old mammalian brain, or the limbic brain. Our feelings and emotions are governed here. And finally, on top of that, we have the neocortex, the part of the brain that controls cognition and language. Our rationality resides here between these 2 parts of the brain. Let me explain why. Our emotions originate here in the limbic brain. Chemicals are released to arouse our awareness of our surroundings. The problem is when we try to translate these sensations and feelings into words using our neocortex. For these 2 different parts of the brain, the communication and translation taking place between them is often inaccurate, and hence leads to our irrationality. Emotions and cognition are not easily translatable. What seems like anger may truly just come from a source of envy. Whereas animals feel fear for a short time, we often dwell on our fears. We make them greater than they are, and we can feel long-term anxiety. We are always feeling certain emotions, and therefore they are always infecting our thinking. Rational people are aware of this. Being able to mitigate your emotions from your thinking helps you make rational decisions. Irrational people are not even aware that their emotions are playing a role in their thinking, often making rash decisions or exploding with rage over menial discomforts. Don't worry though, there are ways we can mitigate our inherently irrational minds. Step 1. Recognize and understand your biases. The most common emotion is the desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This pleasure principle in thinking is the source of all our mental biases. Confirmation bias. Going in search of evidence to support your point of view and turning a blind eye to anything that disconfirms your held belief. Finding evidence that confirms what we want to believe is confirmation bias. Counteract this by also playing devil's advocate and finding opposing views. Conviction bias. How can this idea be wrong if I can have so much energy to defend it? You may even have doubts about the truth of this belief, but now you have dug a hole where you feel the need to defend the idea and convince yourself that it is true. Appearance bias. The halo effect. If someone appears to have a positive quality, we tend to attribute other positive qualities to that person without any evidence. Likewise for negative qualities. Appearances are misleading. The group bias. We love and are relieved when we find other people who think the same way that we do. Isolation and disparity from the group makes us depressed. Groupthink is when people take up ideas solely because they bring us comfort and a sense of belonging to the group. The blame bias. Our innate response is to blame others. It is more painful to look in the mirror and admit our mistakes. This is the blame bias. Superiority bias. We all like to think of ourselves as likable, ethical, and rational. But this can't actually be true, because if it were true, we would all have world peace, and that just isn't the case.